Yes, I can. I see the Runecast main dashboard.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Again, thank you very much. So yeah, Runecast solution. I'll start by just giving a brief background and overview, and then my main focus today is to illustrate the product and what it can do. Go through the feature set, and really just show you, the analytics that's being performed by Runecast Analyzer and how it can benefit and help any VMware or cloud-based environment. So Runecast was developed just over 6 years ago. Our co-founders headed up and led the VMware Center of Expertise for IBM in Europe. And ultimately, they kept running into the scenario of, troubleshooting issues and investigating resolutions to those issues, only to find out about 90% of the problems they were running into over and over and over again were documented somewhere. They were already documented by either a vendor or, the tech communities or different types of things. So they stepped back and said, well, if all of these issues are already known, or 90% of them are already known and documented, why isn't there a product out there that can scan your environment and pinpoint and highlight these things and show you these problems before they actually create an outage in your environment? So that's the premise of Runecast Analyzer. We have a highly talented team of developers that put this product together and continually update it and expand the focus and the supportability of Runecast Analyzer as far as products. We're reaching out into, our bread and butter in the beginning was VMware on-prem, looking at those environments, and that's still where we practice the most heavily. But we're also doing checks and giving you data and response back on your configurations in your AWS cloud services, as well as your Microsoft Azure, Kubernetes, and different services like that. So, we have this high level of talent. Our CEO is actually VMware design expert number 74, Stan Markov. And so they put all these things together and just decided to use all of these different available repositories, knowledge repositories in the industry, and pull them into a product that does the analytics on board and, is lightweight in nature, and within minutes provides you with data on your environment. And so that brings us to the topic of today of breaking the mold of how us as IT sysadmins and IT professionals are so used to the normal troubleshooting aspect of waiting for problems to happen, and then some monitoring system, alerting system lets us know about the problem, and then we have to take the time and troubleshoot the issue while it's in place and while it's impacting our business. So that's really the underlying and theme of Runecast, is to highlight those configuration problems ahead of time, so you can go out and resolve those before you have issues in the environment, security vulnerabilities, and those types of things. So with that being said, the Runecast Analyzer solution, again, has been brought off and kicked off the ground, and is now every month we're expanding the product and adding to the product. And ultimately, the intent of this is to provide 5 different major functions for you in a single product. So you don't have to, typically, if we want 5 major things accomplished in our IT environments, we have to purchase 5 separate products, which comes with overhead and cost and maintenance and time, right? We have to troubleshoot them and make sure agents are deployed properly and functioning properly. We have external databases to connect to and manage and license and support. All this comes at a cost. All of this comes at an operational overhead. What Runecast Analyzer tries to do is really separate all that out, provide it with one simple, straightforward product that's easy to install. It's learning curve on it's extremely flat. It's all self-explanatory. It provides you with all of the data you need to resolve those issues, etc. So again, breaking the mold. Let's get out of the old mentality of waiting for things to break first and then taking steps and addressing them. Use something like Runecast Analyzer that's truly proactive in nature, that pulls in all of knowledge repositories and not subsets of them, and analyzes your environment and gives you results. So that's the premise of Runecast Analyzer. That's the topic of discussion today, is trying to change our thinking about how we address our environment and keep it healthy, and not, constantly find ourselves in this firefighting mentality. And I'm as guilty as anybody. I've been in the industry for several years, and we're all just used to it. Wait for something to break, then we'll address it. So with that being said, what I'm sharing here is the Runecast Analyzer solution, the web client to it. This is, a lab environment that we have set up. And, I just like to begin by, back to the point of Runecast Analyzer is very simple to deploy. It's very easy to configure. I'll walk through the product and show you some of the configurations, but really the emphasis is on the functionality today. But ultimately it's 15 minutes, you can deploy this. During the installation, vast majority of our clients run this as a virtual appliance on-prem in their VMware environment. So it becomes a virtual machine. Single OVA file deployment, which is very standard among products these days. There are no agents that get deployed with it. It's fully self-contained. Another great aspect of our product as well is it's highly secure. There's no data that ever leaves the appliance. In fact, you can run the appliance without an internet connection. Okay. If you do provide an internet connection to it, then Runecast will push definition database updates to it. Okay. So only flow into the analyzer itself is inbound. There's nothing ever going outbound. So there's no cloud presence. There's no bundle logs and send them somewhere else and those types of things with the product. So again, very simple and easy to set up, configure. During the installation, you'll be asked to target your management system, or in the case of on-prem VMware, your vCenter server. And that's where Runecast Analyzer gathers all of your configuration data, pulls it into the analyzer itself, and does the analytics against our built-in definition database that has all of these knowledge repositories built in and are constantly being updated. At minimum, we update the definition database twice a month. Unless there's a severe security advisory or something in there, then we'll drop everything and push it out within the next day. But this is where we're housing the VMware's KB repository. We pull in all of VMware's knowledge base or KB articles that are relevant to the products that we're scanning. We don't just pull in a subset of them. We're pulling all of them in, regardless of version that you're running. We're going to scan your environment, highlight KBs and known issues that are documented by the vendor. We're also going to pull in best practices, the vulnerability, security, compliance, HCL, and so on and so forth. So we're starting to breach into the major feature set and functionality of Runecast Analyzer. But these are all stored in the definition database. So again, nothing that needs to be connected to externally. There isn't an external database, again, to manage, set up, license, etc. It's all self-contained. So if I go through here, when you log in, you'll be brought directly to this screen. That's the main dashboard. On the left-hand side, there's three main sections of Runecast Analyzer. We have the main menu section, three different ways in which we present all of the data at a high level. Configuration analysis, and this is where we touch on all those functionality and feature sets that I'm talking about, where we have KBs, hardware compatibility, etc. And then finally, at the bottom, we have log analysis. And I'll cover what we do with your logs as soon as I get to that section as well. But in here, I like to start in the configuration analysis section. Therefore, the main menu and other areas will become more clear what we're talking about once we get there. So after an analysis is performed, again, the very first time you do it, you come in and click this button, Analyze Now. within minutes you have results in your environment. It's not something that you kick off, come back tomorrow and hope you have data. It's literally a matter of minutes, regardless of the size of your environment. You're talking minutes, not hours or days, and you have results. So the analytics is very fast. Any scan that happens after the initial scan, the data is cached. It's only looking for changes. So the scans will become even faster after you do the initial scan. But what we're doing is that analytics is all taking place, and we're going to illustrate to you, based on severity, the items that were found in the environment based on the knowledge repository. So we're in the KB's discovered section. It's VMware's knowledge base articles, those issues that they have documented that people run into regarding their product. So if I open one of the findings, I'm going to see, and Runecast is going to provide details, everything that you need to know about this KB. We pull all the data in here. We're going to give you high level. This one happens to be a purple screen risk. I have that risk on 2 objects in my environment. It applies to compute. It affects availability. The products we're looking at in KB's discovered as vSphere. None of the other vendors that we support have a knowledge base repository, so we can't scan your Azure account services for KBs because that simply doesn't exist. Once it does, we'll have it in our product, but today it doesn't. So we're back to giving you all of the details regarding it. We're going to give you links to VMware's website and the KB specifically, but we do pull everything in from it, so everything's within the product. Again, a high-level description of what this is purple screen risk. We're going to, and this is a big differentiator from Runecast Analyzer to other products, is we're going to provide you a resolution. We tell you how to fix it. We don't provide you some obscure error code to where then you have to go spend time, research, and hope you find a relevant fix. We're going to provide you the resolution. This is a purple screen. The resolution happens to be to upgrade or update your ESXi version. That's the resolution to this problem. We're also going to list out symptoms that you're experiencing or will experience based on your configuration, what causes this. And in this case, the resolution is an upgrade, and we can't just drop everything and do in-place upgrades. We all know that. So there is a workaround that's available. So a command line, we provide it to you to go and run on these 2 objects to prevent them from experiencing a purple screen until we can plan the upgrade. So again, all of the data and information you need to know about the KB, what it is, symptoms, etc., are going to be found there. And then if you go to the findings tab, this is where you're going to find the details around the objects. So we're going to give you the host names that are at risk for purple screen, the configuration checks that were performed to validate this condition's true. So we're not just checking host version or build number, but it's also how you have your VMNix configured. So all of these conditions must be true for Runecast to flag this as an issue in your environment and a risk for the purple screen. We're also going to provide you a note section. This is a free form field. You can add whatever you want in here. As an example, to be patched, obviously my dates are off, but you could add whatever you want in here to this note section. If you populate the note section in any of the findings that we have, it will add an orange triangle to the finding itself, so you can easily determine that that finding has a note associated with it. We're also going to provide ignore buttons. This gives you the ability to create a filter and filter this finding out if you wish you wanted to in the future. And with the filter option, you can get very granular. You don't have to apply it globally. You can apply it down to an object level if you wish, and only filter that finding on that specific object. If you ever place a filter and click the ignore button, filters are managed in settings. You can turn them on or off or delete them if you wish. I'm not going to I'll talk about custom profiles as I get through the product. I just want everybody to note that this is available, and it's available in any of our findings. But again, I'll talk about what custom profiles are in a moment. So that's KB's discovered. Again, we're going to list by severity. We have 4 different severity levels: critical, major, medium, and low. Criticals will be listed first. They're the most important that need to be addressed. But if I go through my list, eventually we'll see the mediums and lows as well. So that is KB's Discovered. At the top of each of these screens, you'll see as I work through the product, Runecast illustrates things very similarly, regardless of area you're in. So we're going to provide at the top drop-down menus to allow you to segment the data you're looking at the moment. So I could come in here and only look at criticals. I can come in here and select criticals that only affect security, so on and so forth. Regardless of where you are in the product as well, you can export the data that you're looking at with filters in place or without. We give you 3 different options in which you can generate reports and have this data at your fingertips outside of the product. So best practices is where we start breaching into the other products that we support. You know, Amazon, Microsoft, Kubernetes, all these organizations have best practices of recommendations from the vendors of how you should have your environment configured. So, you know, in the very beginning, they're going to hand you, you know, a secure environment that's configured the way it's supposed to be. But over time, as things change, we add things, we install things, we run, and without knowing it, we could start breaching those best practices in our configurations and different things and exposing security vulnerabilities as well. So with those services, we're doing Runecast Analyzer's doing the best practice checks, showing you a pass or fail if you're complying against them or you're not. Identifying the objects, all the relevant data and information about the best practice, and so on and so forth. So covering the configuration as well as security, and I'll cover more on security in a moment, but that's the main intent of with the cloud services, Kubernetes, SAP HANA running on VMware, those types of things. We're making sure and quickly, in a matter of minutes, showing you where you're configured to the recommendation or you're not. Again, if I open a finding, all the similar data, links to VMware's best practice in their website, high level detail about what this is. This happens to be time sync for objects that I don't have in my environment with time sync configured. The objects, those 4 objects that I need to address, the check that was performed, it's on or off, it's a single step check, note section, ignore button, etc. So again, the flow and the information is all here and all looks very similar regardless of where you're at within the product. So that is best practices. The next is, this is very new for us. We just added this vulnerability section, and what we did is built in a check against common vulnerabilities and exposures. We do have security compliance in 11 different industry standard frameworks that are available within our product to scan your environment against, but we also took it a step further and we're checking for CVEs and ultimately highlighting those where you're passing or failing a CVE that's common, giving you high level detail about what the CVE is. Again, back to the resolution, we tell you how to fix it. You don't have to go off and investigate and try to figure out how to fix it. We provide that. We're going to show you the hosts that are failing this as an example. I have 9 objects in here that are failing this, the checks that were performed. CVEs also give you the opportunity to customize the check and the value that they're checking against. So you can customize this to your environment by just clicking the add a custom value, apply it wherever you want, enter the value, etc. So the next scan will be checking on your custom value that you've placed in there and the variable. Again, we're not here just to highlight and pinpoint things that are broken. Eventually, we'll show you what's passing. Great for an overall health check, security stance, prepare you for an upcoming audit, whatever the case may be. We're also going to show you things that are passing. So that's CVEs. It goes hand in hand with the next section, which is security compliance. And this is where we have the 11 different industry standard security frameworks built into the product. You can enable or disable any of these within the settings. We understand not everybody needs to try to comply against 11 different standards. We have everything in here from BSIIT, which is a German government standard, to Center for Internet Security, Cyber Essentials DSysTig for United States Department of Defense. Essentially, it's an Australian government standard. GDPR is European. We also have HIPAA, ISO 27001, NIST, PCI, and VMware's own security hardening guidelines. So in a single scan, you can scan your environment against any 1, 2, 3, or all of these, and ultimately see results on your environment, how you're stacking up against those organizations' definition of their framework, and so on and so forth. So if I come into and highlight ISO as an example, again, the results are going to be very similar, pass, fail. Either I'm configured towards the controller, I'm not. And ultimately, all of the details, again, regarding this. We're going to give you links to that organization's website that talks about the control. We're going to tell you the products that are affected, in this case, AWS services that I have. We're going to show you the objects again, the checks that were performed to validate this. Runecast Analyzer doesn't provide false positives. It does extensive analytics to validate this condition is true in your environment based on your configuration, note section, etc. Now, with 11 different security standards, all built by 11 different organizations, all of the results and Runecast findings are going to look very similar in the data that we provide. But each of them will have their own nuance, if you will, just subtle differences between them that some have and some don't. ISO, as an example, has the controls listed with the ISO numbers and the control numbers. Their results have failed configured, configure manual, as opposed to HIPAA may only have results as pass, fail, those types of things. So a little bit of nuance, but at the end of the day, the results are similar. We're going to provide you the resolution. We're going to flag it, show you the objects that need attention, if you're failing this or passing it, etc. The intent behind us as a company of putting a security standard in our product is to get you audit compliant against that standard. The point of that is we're not pulling in subsets of the standard to only illustrate, a portion of the things that might be relevant. We're pulling in the entire standard to show you everything that's relevant to where you can become compliant against the standard. Like ISO 27001 has a certification process as an example. Our intent is to help get your VMware environment or your cloud space environment ready for an ISO 27001 certification. So that's the intent behind us putting these into the product. So I'll just briefly touch on NIST as an example. A little bit of difference in some of these as well is in how the data is presented. So again, we're always going to talk about the control, what it means, why it's important. In this case, 2 different tabs. We're going to provide you the organization's detail around the control, what it is, more in a security lingo that's available for the auditor or your security officer that works for your organization. But we're also going to provide the technical description that gives the VMware sysadmin the steps and tools they need to do to go to remediate this and change this from a fail to a pass, as an example. Because us as VM sysadmins don't always speak the security lingo. I know I don't. I just want to know how to fix it. That's what we're providing here. This is how you fix it. Again, findings showing the objects. I only have one object in this NIST control that's failing, my NSX vManager, etc. So again, all of the results and the data that you need to address the issue. And again, not an error code that you have to go off and research yourself. So that's security compliance. I'm going to briefly jump over hardware compatibility and go into custom profiles, because again, it goes hand in hand with each of these sections that I've already covered. But we had many prospects and clients ask us for a way to customize a Runecast check or Runecast scan. So that's what we did here, is give you the ability to create a profile, a custom profile, create a profile, give it a name, enable it within here. And then that profile is available to where you can go out and pick and choose anything that Runecast Analyzer is already checking against and add it to your profile. This gives you a way to customize your scan and a way to only hone in and focus on certain things that you've selected to focus on. Because if you see in here, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of things, 30 plus thousand checks are being performed when I click Analyze Now. Ends up resulting in a lot of data. So if I want to hone in on that, I can do so by creating a profile. I can build my own security compliance policy. I can come in here and select any of these controls from any of these standards, add them to my profile, and essentially create my own standard. So I could enable all of VMware's guidelines within the product and scan against it. But say I want 3 or 4 NIST controls, 6 or 7 ISO controls, and maybe some HIPAA and different things. Most organizations have a requirement for other types of controls in their environment, depending on the vertical they're participating in. So I can do that. I can go in here and select any of these controls, add them to my custom profile, and then pay attention to those controls after the scan. So Runecast Analyzer automatically assigns an issue ID to these standard areas. If I create a custom profile, I'm able to add this control to the profile. I can assign the severity level to it. Say for my organization, this isn't a major, it's a critical. I can adjust that here, or say it's not a major, it might be a medium and low. And I can add it to the profile. I can give it a title and note, description of what it means to me in my business and why I want to pay attention to it, etc. So there's a lot of flexibility here in customizing your own scan. So again, you can add best practices, KBs, any of the security compliance controls and checks to your custom profile. The next section is hardware compatibility. So not only are we checking KBs and security and best practices and all these types of things, we're also looking at your hardware stack and highlighting and pinpointing those areas within the hardware stack that are not compatible with the current version of ESXi that you're running. So what we have built into our definition database is all of VMware's HCLs from 7 update 2 and latest and greatest back to 6. Unfortunately, prior to 6, we don't have available in the hardware simulator in our product, but 5 and so forth is compatible in other sections. But we're building that in, and again, we're going to highlight. So green means everything in the server is good and compatible. Red means there's an issue. We're going to pinpoint down to the BIOS levels, firmware and driver versions on your IO devices and cards installed, where you're not compatible with the version you're running, and ultimately those underlying configurations that ultimately cause downstream problems, downstream outages, and inability to perform, and process, etc. So these I like to call needles in the haystack. We're trying to shine that light on those needles to where, you don't get into a very complex and time-consuming troubleshooting effort while you're experiencing downtime in your environment. We're trying to highlight that and pinpoint it so you can go resolve those issues and prevent those things from happening. We had a client quite a while ago, before we added hardware compatibility, that performed a VMware upgrade and ultimately lost their storage arrays and configurations, and therefore their storage was down for a period of time. It came back to a firmware version on their IO device ultimately. So that is scanning your environment, showing you against the version you're currently running. We decided to take a step further. I kind of gave a peek into it to simulate an upgrade. So over time, of course, ESXi versions become old, they get retired, they become unsupported, etc. We all have to upgrade eventually. So we built in a simulator. If you notice, 3 different clusters I have in my environment, all mixed mode. I have version 6.5, 6.7, 7. I can select any of these and perform a simulation, or leave them all unchecked and perform a simulation against all of them. I'll select 7 update 2, click simulate. And what we're doing here is, because we have the HCL built in, we have your configuration cached already from your hardware stack. We're able to simulate as if you were running version 7 update 2. We're going to highlight and pinpoint those areas and items that you need to upgrade prior or update prior to an upgrade. Okay, so nobody likes to get in the middle of an upgrade and start experiencing problems, or immediately following an upgrade and then have outages and back to that needle in a haystack trying to figure out what went wrong. We're highlighting and pinpointing IO devices, firmware driver versions that are compatible and not. That gives me time to plan appropriately and make sure my environment's steady prior to an upgrade, so I don't experience those problems during or after. And again, this, the HCL is already in our database. This isn't staged. It's really this fast. Again, configuration data is already cached. Definitions are already updated. I can select any version I want, click simulate, and I have results within seconds. So if you step back and think about manually or writing scripts and trying to gather this information and hope you didn't miss something, matter of seconds, click a button, Runecast Analyzer populates this stuff for you. Huge time saver. And we're going to pinpoint. And again, as with everywhere else in the product, we not only pinpoint the problem, we provide you a resolution and the solution. So let me just go to an IO device, driver, firmware version or combinations not supported in 7. We provide a list of those that are. You don't have to go to the vendor's website. You don't have to go to VMware's HCL and try to, figure out the compatibility matrix down to the firmware and driver version. Click of a button, we provide that information for you. We provide you with what is supported. So with that, if it's documented in the HCL, we're going to check it. You could be running a Dell server with HP cards, an HP server with Cisco cards. If it's documented on the HCL, we're checking it, we're going to flag it, and we're going to highlight those things for you. It doesn't matter. You can be running a mixed mode hardware environment. It doesn't matter. We're going to highlight those things if it's documented. So that's the hardware compatibility list. In here, again, we have the export button. I can generate a report. One other thing I like about the hardware compatibility is it provides a way, an inventory view, and it provides you a way with managing the life cycle of your hardware. Eventually, all hardware gets too old. You need to retire it. At this point, you can step through and figure out at what point you can upgrade your ES6i host and determine at a certain point, if the host isn't supported, you have to retire that host. Every example I've shown you, the cards and the host can be upgraded and don't have to be replaced. But ultimately, if I had some older servers in this environment, I would then get flagged. It'd be red. I know I have to retire it before I perform that upgrade. Again, all with a click of a button in a matter of seconds. So that's hardware compatibility. The next section is log analysis. What we do with your logs, Runecast Analyzer is not positioned to be a full syslog solution. There's other great products out there like Log Insight that are very good at bringing all your logs in to a central location for many different products. They're very good at that. We take a different approach with our log analysis, and essentially our log analysis is meant for the VM sysadmin to pinpoint and highlight issues to help speed up troubleshooting events that are occurring. And log analysis is the only part of our tool that's considered reactive in nature as opposed to proactive, because these are events that are occurring, right? The nature of logs. But what we're going to do is 2 different things with your logs. We're going to highlight and pinpoint any KB article related to what's found in your logs. Okay, much like the KB discovered up here. Again, that's against your configuration. This is against your logs. We're going to highlight in detail the information, pull all the data from the KB in, what the error is, what it means, symptoms you're experiencing. These are logs. You're going to be experiencing these already, and a resolution. So ultimately, again, telling you how to fix it. You don't have to go research. Findings, we're going to identify those hosts that are generating logs related to this KB article. And again, listed by severity. We're going to highlight KBs that are related to what's found in your logs. The second thing that we do with your logs is what we call log inspector. So as opposed to bringing all of your logs in to a central location, therefore you have to search and know what you're looking for, those types of things, which are great for their purpose. But what we do is we're going to filter and only illustrate logs that are related to an error code. So filtered and based on these failed to, unable to, SCSI command, NMP, and only highlight those logs that are related to an issue or an error in your environment, and highlight those logs and ultimately show you, again, shining that light on the needle in a haystack, showing you where you need to address your attention. We give you opportunity to look at by host name, number of logs per host. You can see quickly the major violators. If you open up program, you can see which program within the kernel is generating the most logs. Okay, are they coming from hostd, mem, heap, etc.? You can see that again to help aid and troubleshoot, or the sysadmin in troubleshooting and remediating problems as fast as possible, getting systems back up, resolving those issues. We're going to give you a training analysis graph where you can see your log counts over time related to the error codes. We are going to give you a search screen if you know what you're looking for. We are also going to provide you a date range selector. You can go back in time and see how you've been doing over time in your logs, et cetera, et cetera. So that's Log Inspector. Again, not intended to be a full syslog solution like a Log Insight, but to hone in and key in on those things that will help you remediate and troubleshoot issues that you're experiencing. So with that, that's all of the functionality of Runecast Analyzer and the analytics that's taking place and how we're displaying the data from the 5 major feature sets that I talked about. So KBs, best practices, security, hardware compatibility, and logs, all in a single product. With all of that, again, we'll go back up to the main menu in 3 different ways in which we present at a consolidation all of this data for you. So we have a dashboard where we're going to show you Runecast findings based on severity. We're going to show you number of KBs that are applicable. We're going to give you little trending graphs so you can quickly see how you're doing over time. If you're out there remediating issues, if new issues are popping up, we're going to show you your best practice adoption percentage, security compliance, incompatible hosts, log issues. We're going to show you the issue history. And what this is going to do is it stores and illustrates the last 30 scans that Runecast Analyzer performed. Any area of this dashboard, it's selectable hyperlinks. I can go directly to that day's data, that section's data, look at medium issues in management as an example. But we're also going to illustrate issues by layer, management, compute, network, storage, VM, hosts with the most issues. We're just going to highlight those hosts that need the most attention. Okay, we got some criticals out here that we need to address. The numbers are high, and so on and so forth. And down below, we're going to illustrate and show you the systems that are targeted from Runecast for analytics. So these are your management systems, your vCenter servers, your Horizon connection broker, Kubernetes API server, AWS account, your Azure account, et cetera, is going to be listed in here. So you can quickly see which systems you have targeted in your environment for analysis by Runecast. The next view is inventory view, much similar to what you'd see in vCenter. This is a hierarchy view of the objects in your environment. Ultimately, this view allows you to drill down to the object level to see the Runecast findings related to a specific object. And that's the difference between this view and others. It gives you a quick way to look at a specific object. I can come in here, select a virtual machine. I can see 162 issues identified by Runecast. And then I can come in here and start selecting things. And automatically you'll start seeing familiar areas like in the other sections of the findings related to the object, details about this finding, note section. I can add a note from here if I want. I can create a filter from here. I can generate a report, etc. So full functionality. I can only, I can show healthy objects as well as those objects that have issues. So really able to adjust this and generate reporting. But again, being able to get down to the object level is the main purpose of inventory view. So with that, all issues view is the next section where we pull in, regardless of profile, that we're checking against, whether it be a KB, best practice, security, compliance, etc., all into a single but different view. So this is the all issues. We're going to give you a trending graph. You can see issues by date over time. You can select a date range to view. You can select looking at objects or issues. And down below, again, all of the results based on severity that Runecast has found. KB articles, best practices, your CVEs, your security profiles that you have enabled, and so on and so forth. And again, if I drill through here, it goes through all the severity levels, so I can see everything. With the drop downs, again, for reporting purposes or to segment the data, what you want to look at the moment, you can select by system. You can select just to look at AWS services or one vCenter. You can sort and filter by severity, profile. If I only want to look at best practices or KBs in here, what it applies to effects. And the all issues view is where we provide a full list of products that we support. I've touched on most of them: AWS, Azure, vCloud Director, NSXT, NV, Kubernetes. Most of these are cloud services. your RDS, your AWS config, SAP HANA running on VMware. We'll do best practice checks against it as well, and any known KB checks as well. VMware's Horizon, I haven't really talked much about that, but we will connect to a Verizon Connection Manager and provide you with feedback regarding your VDI environment. So that's a full list of supported products that Runecast Analyzer is looking at. Month over month, we're constantly adding to this list and really trying to broaden the spectrum of what Runecast supports, all again with a single product. So you don't have to have 7, 8, 10 different products installed and purchase and support, try to do it all in one thing. So that's the all issues view. If I go into settings, I want to illustrate real quick, Enterprise Console. We have, many different clients that are MSPs or large environments where you may end up needing to install more than one Runecast Analyzer in an environment. Say you're dispersed geographically by business unit, what have you, by region. If you have multiple Runecast Analyzers, we give you the ability to add all of those analyzers into a single dashboard to where you can see what's happening across those analyzers. So I can group them if I wish by customer, by department, by region, pull them in so I can quickly see what's happening based on a customer or a department. We're going to list out the management system names that they're scanning. What is it? What type? Is it a vCenter server, Azure service? And give you the high level of what's happening with it. So all of the issue Runecast is finding, the critical, major, medium, lows, your log compliancy and what's being generated, security, best practices, and all those things. We're going to show you the version of Runecast that it's running. If I do the information tab, it'll tell you the definition of Runecast and if it's up to date. Local analyzer indicates that it's the one I'm logged into currently and showing. But these hyperlinks are to those remote analyzers. If I select them, I'll automatically pull up in another web space. Those analyzers pass through authentication. I'm already on them and can view results and start taking troubleshooting steps as I wish very quickly from the Enterprise Console dashboard. So that gives the ability for anybody running multiple Runecast analyzers. I want to highlight over here, we also built in, if you select the drop down under context, we have different dashboard views for, we have the overall dashboard that I just showed you. If I go into, for instance, my AWS as an example and click dashboard, we've built, let me get back here and select it. It's slower than I am today, which is not usually the case. So again, we have different dashboard views for your cloud services, for your Kubernetes instances, your management systems, etc. So if you want to look at those services specifically, see at a high level what's happening with them, you're going to see issues by severity, your security compliance, best practices, which profiles you have enabled and you're scanning those services against. And then ultimately those services within the cloud space that we support, your Elastic Compute, your storage and database or S3, network, identity access management, and giving you results in each of those separate areas and sections. We'll also provide you a trending analysis graph over time of how you've been stacking up, and then a worldwide view of where your services are hosted from and etc. that ultimately will help you in identifying your environment and keeping tabs on it. So that is some of the different dashboards. I won't spend a lot of time in settings, but show you a couple of things in settings. So connections, this is where you add your management system. So your vCenter servers, your NSX managers, vCloud Director, Azure, so on and so forth, Horizon. Very simple in nature. Click add, give it an FQDN or IP, the appropriate user credentials, continue, confirm, and then you have a green check, which means that management system's now available to do and perform a Runecast analysis and check. We do offer a vCenter web client plugin, so you can enable that within your vCenter web client and see Runecast results within vCenter, so you don't have to jump back and forth from the vCenter web client to the Runecast web client and so forth. You can see items from there and begin troubleshooting from the environment you're almost always logged into anyway. So we do provide that. One other plugin that we also provide is a Vrealize Orchestrator plugin, which enables you to use Orchestrator to do auto security remediation via some default workflows that Runecast provides. So you can ultimately start performing auto remediation steps using Orchestrator for some of the security findings that Runecast has. So those are the two major plugins that we have. Not last but not least, we also have a ServiceNow integration plugin. That's one of our first ventures into integrating with third-party apps. We do have a ServiceNow. So ultimately, you can enable that plugin and generate tickets based on Runecast findings as well. So that's available on our website, and so on and so forth. So again, integration. Otherwise, how our clients generally integrate if they're not running snow and different things is Runecast offers a full REST API. Any data that Runecast generates or contains is available via API calls. So you can pull anything out, send it to whatever system, monitoring system, ticketing system that you wish that you're running in your environment, and have those things set up alerts or tickets based on Runecast findings. In here, the API access token, this is where you generate a token that completes your handshake from vCenter or VRO, and so on and so forth. So you just generate the token in here. Enterprise console is where you enable or disable Enterprise console. So with that, you don't have to come in and manually click Analyze Now every time you want a scan to happen. You can schedule them to occur automatically. If you come in here, you can schedule a scan to run every hour, day, week. Again, very little to no overhead across the network. Users generally don't even know if a scan's running. So you can run these pretty much anytime you want. And something that goes hand in hand with the automatic scheduler is the alerting. Configure SMTP to receive an email when a scan completes with a dashboard report attached. So you can just check your inbox every morning to see what's been happening with Runecast and the findings, and not have to run, log into Runecast every single day and check on things. Log analysis out of the box. Runecast, of course, doesn't know about your host servers, and therefore doesn't have the log analysis section enabled. So under here, you can go in and enable the log forwarding from your hosts, from your VMs, from an infrastructure layer to Runecast Analyzer. Knowledge profile section is where you enable or disable any of those 11 different security standards that we have available in the product. Very quickly, check or uncheck. If you uncheck them, they won't show up on the left. You don't have to pay attention to them, etc. Filters are managed under the Filters tab. Anytime you click Ignore within the product, give it a name, it's going to show up in here. You can therefore, turn these filters off or on as you wish, or delete them if you have no use for them anymore, etc. So that is really a high level of how you configure Runecast Analyzer. Again, a single OVA, virtual appliance in the environment. Once it's installed, come in and target a vCenter server, click Analyze Now. Within minutes, you have all this data at your fingertips and can start working. The idea of Runecast Analyzer is to perform those tasks that ultimately human beings just don't have time to do. I don't know anybody that sits on VMware's website and looks through 30,000 KB articles as an example, and comes back and makes sure you're not susceptible in your environment to them, or looks at the best practices constantly and making sure your environment's configured to all of the recommendations and those types of things. So, in essence, we're trying to provide, in a way, a full-time VM sysadmin on site just to check your configuration and highlight underlying vulnerabilities that you have in your environment. And that's really the intent. Again, I talk about Analyze Now. On average, 35,000 checks are performed when you click this button. And that's the average size environment. We have some clients that have large environments and they're averaging 150, 170,000 checks. So you got to think about each of these profiles that are being performed on every object and piece of hardware that they have in their environment. It easily adds up, I guess, is the point. So again, all this analytics taking place and taking that out of your hands so you can focus on more important projects, innovation activities, those types of things that you want to do in your environment that take precedence. So that's Runecast Analyzer. I just wanted to thank everybody for your time and appreciate your attention and giving me the opportunity to display and show you what Runecast Analyzer can do. And again, break that mold. Let's get to a point where we're stopping the mentality of waiting for things to happen before we take action, and let a product like Runecast Analyzer do all that discovery work for you and highlight those things so you can plan your changes in your environment and prevent those performance issues, those network lags, all those types of things that we run into, and ultimately prevent those outages that are bound to happen based on our configuration stack. So with that being said, Ben, back to you. Thank you very much for the time. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you. There was one question in the chat from Greg. He said he installed it on a test server and it allocated 120 gigs of storage. He wants to know if that can be extended in app if you wanted to store years of data. Like how long does the store metric by default?
Yeah. Great question. By default, there are some thresholds. It'll store like up to the last 6 months. You can extend that. Absolutely. You can adjust the retention period. And the appliances ran as a virtual machine. So you can extend disks, add resources to it if you wish. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions? Feel free to unmute yourselves and ask a question if you have one. All right. I guess that's it. Wade, I don't know if you or if you guys want to share any contact info, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, or should they just fill out that quiz and you guys will reach out from there?
Yeah. In fact, I think Matthew has a contact slide I think he could share.
All right. While he's doing that, I'm posting the links for the NJVMUG sign-in sheet and the Runecast quiz.
Yes, let me go ahead and share this.
Do you have a slide you can share? Sure.
Yes.
Sorry, Matthew. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I figured you had it more handily available than I did.
I do.
All right. I figured you did. Thank you.
Let me share that real quick. There you go. Can you guys see that?
Yes, sir.
I can stick it in the chat as well if you like.
Yeah, and we'd love to, that's what Matthew and I do. We demo the product and talk to different businesses about how we can help them. So we'd love to set up a demo, and talk about individual businesses and what Runecast can do. We do have trials available as well. We also offer a proof of value program that helps build a business case using Runecast Analyzer on your results from your environment. So another step to help management understand the value of Runecast and make a decision to move forward with us. So those things, that's free of charge. There's no charge on that at all. So something that we provide. So just information on that.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. This was awesome. It was great to see. I love how, it sucks when you're in the middle of an outage trying to troubleshoot an issue. And if you can be proactive and find out about it ahead of time, saves tons of time and potentially saves the business a lot of money.
Yes, absolutely. I think we've all been there, right? I've personally I've been pulled into issues that tend, again, those problems that are very hard to discover, those complex issues that end up being, something you wouldn't think would be related, that brought your storage down or different things. I've spent weeks troubleshooting those types of things. So yeah, it's nice to know there's something out there like Runecast that can pinpoint those items for us. But thank you for the time, Ben.
Totally.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, guys. So we're going to